Welcome to Healing Waters Global She Reads, a podcast dedicated to amplifying the voices of women authors and writers. At She Reads, we advocate for women's empowerment, healing, and justice. Join us as we delve deep into the transformative power of storytelling, one page at a time. Today, we have author Marcia Willett and her book, Dear John, Letters You'll Never Read. Martha is a formerly retired, now no longer retired pastor that lives in Theodore, Alabama. And there she writes, she raises critters, and she eagerly awaits visits from her 4 grandchildren. If you'd like to read any of Marcia's publicized works, you can find them in Words Have Wings, a Carpe Style anthology of poetry and art, or From the Dark, Out of the Darkness Came Light. And it's a Carpe Style anthology of short stories. And Marcia Willett's book today is called Dear John, Letters You'll Never Read. And Marcia, if you could just tell us, if someone is interested in purchasing this, how they could possibly get this book.
The easiest way to get it right now is either at Barnes and Nobles or from Amazon, although Amazon has recently put me on third-party purchaser. So you have to go through a third party to buy the book, and they're asking for too much money. So I would try Barnes and Noble first, and then Amazon if you're just so desperate to read it you can hardly stand it. So, but it's pricey on Amazon.
Price doesn't matter. You should buy the book anyways.
I agree, but I'm also conscious of whether or not that's a fair price to ask, and I don't think it is.
If you could possibly tell us a little bit about your book.
Okay. John died in April of 2019, so that's a little over 6 years ago, and it was very unexpected. We had recently reconciled, and we're looking for a home, and going through the motions of getting back together. And he had a heart attack. He had congestive heart failure and some other issues, and he died very suddenly. And it was traumatic. And I've been in ministry long enough to I don't have a tough hide, but you learn to deal with death in different ways as a minister than you do just in general. So I didn't grieve in the traditional way, but I have been writing for a long time, and Bernita's on with us, and she and I had gone to a conference in Canton, Mississippi, that was for clerical writers, and I had started on another project. But when John died, I started writing letters to him, as if he were going to open them if I mailed them to him. So I published them to my Facebook page, and I have a lot of friends who encouraged me to put them in book form. So I did that for a year, wrote letters for a year, and you and Bernita were both very encouraging about getting it published. So I peppered it with some stories, some short stories that talk about our lives together, while we were married. And LaWanda Cheney had started a publishing house, a little bitty publishing house called Bronze Goose Books, and she published it and died like 3 weeks before the book hit the market. And I hate that, because I would have loved for her to be able to see it out in print. I still miss her. She was such a wonderful advocate and friend and editor. She did such a nice job and worked hard for me. So it's a story of how I handled the year plus a little after his death. And it was, for me, very cathartic and very healing. And I'm glad it made it to print. You're muted.
Thank you. Sorry, I've got Kat who wants to join in.
Hi.
Can you tell us how you came up with the title of that book?
Well, I actually ended up having a contest I had chosen the title, Dear John, A Year of Letters from the Dead, and Lawanda hated the title. She hated it. So we had many, many discussions, and um, I really wanted at one point in time to call it Dear John, Since You've Been Gone, which I thought was a great title. I still think it's a great title. But she said, it doesn't really give the reader a hint, as to what yours is going to be about, because a lot of people who have titles Dear John, they automatically think it's a breakup letter. It's a letter that you write
Yeah.
to a soldier, or a letter that you write to somebody that you don't want to be with anymore. So we literally polled some people in the writing group, and we all settled on Dear John, Letters You'll Never Read.
And it was a very, I think, perfectly titled book. The best way, you could say that. Did you have any struggles when you were writing the book?
I think the hardest thing was to maintain sort of an awareness that I wasn't going to be the only one reading it. And I didn't want to soft pedal it, but I also didn't want to be too explicitly harsh about some of the situations that the book deals with, in order not to intentionally exclude or offend some of my family members and some of our very close friends. Because, as you know, when there's trouble between two people, all the friends feel like they have to take sides. So I wanted to be careful, and I didn't hold back on my feelings. I just kind of was careful about the way I structured the actual verbiage, what I put on paper.
Yeah. Because sometimes, we can be so motivated one day to write. And then if we stop for a day or two, it's really hard to get back onto that. I'm going to finish this book. This is my deadline that I've set for myself personally, and to get back into that writing part.
Honest to Pete, the letters, because in my mind, when I wrote those letters, I was talking to John. I was not talking to a future reader base.
Yeah.
I was talking to John. So those were easy. The hard part was the short stories were a little difficult, because there had to be chronology and there had to be cohesiveness. It had to lend itself to the overall, the way the story worked, so that you didn't read these letters and then read a story and go, well, how does that tie into what she just said? And that was challenging. I found that to be very challenging.
What did you hope to achieve by writing this book?
I believe that we as a nation, and I think it's more particular to the United States than other parts of the world, we pigeonhole. We have this tendency to think, okay,
Yeah.
someone's died, yes, and you're sad, and we acknowledge that. So you have 6 months, and at the end of 6 months, we're going to say, don't you think it's time to move on? Why are you still so sad? And I think that's a tremendous mistake, to limit both the length of time and the way in which people grieve. I mean, it took me a year to write these letters, and there's not like there's 60 of them. I think there's 21 or 22 letters. Um, and I also don't like the idea of giving somebody a prescription. If you do this, then this will happen. I think that's a mistake, because we're all individuals. We all have different ideas about how things are going to be accomplished, or how we're going to approach things in our lives. And I wanted this to be a book that, if you read the prologue, you would know that my intended purpose was to show healing through a natural expression of grief.
I find sometimes too that not only do people expect us to, kind of get over in a certain amount of time, but they're, things that we say, and I'm so guilty of it myself, of just get better soon, feel better, so sorry. But it's like sometimes words can make things worse. What's your feeling on that?
There is actually a scripture, I want to say it's in Proverbs, but I'm not positive, that says the best thing you can do when you're with someone whose heart is broken is to cry with them when they're crying and laugh with them when they are laughing. And then just to, everybody says this, practice the presence, be with them. You don't have to fill up a conversation. You don't have to fill up a space with conversation just because they don't want to talk. It is perfectly okay to sit there with them and not talk at all, but be willing to say, I acknowledge where you are. My heart grieves with your heart. I'm here, and if you just want to sit here for an hour and a half and cry, we can do that. If you just want to go outside and watch the sunset, we can do that. I just know that I love you and I'm here.
Thank you for helping us, especially someone like me. In the beginning of this book, you thank God for making this journey with you. Was there ever a time when you felt that you were journeying alone?
No. That's a short answer. I did not. I have a really, really excellent support group that kept me afloat. I got a lot of feedback before I ever even actually thought about putting this into a form where it could be published. And I don't know, I wasn't lonely in the process. I had no doubts, because initially when I was writing the letters, I didn't intend for them to be anything but letters on Facebook. And then once the decision was made to pursue trying to get it published, it was busy. So I didn't really have a lot of time to say, oh, well, I'm in this all by myself. Writing is, by its very nature, it's a solitary event. You can't sit next to somebody and you take turns, I'll write this sentence, you write the next sentence, or have them look over your shoulder, which would have made me incredibly nervous. It would have made it very difficult for me to concentrate and focus. So no, I didn't really struggle with that.
And when you're writing, when do you find is like your best time for you to write?
My witching hour is 10 to 2 a.m., 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. It's much easier for me to write at night than it is for me to write. I don't write in the morning. I know better. It wouldn't be cohesive at all. So I might write in the afternoon, but usually most of my work is done at night, late.
Now, if someone is grieving, can you share some suggestions for how to cope and move forward once like the arrangements have been made, the casseroles stop coming, the sympathy cards stop coming?
I think that week or two after that happens, the memorial or the funeral service is over, they're not calling you to check on you and see how you're doing. You haven't gotten a sympathy card in a couple of days. I think that is probably the most difficult part of a grief journey, because all of a sudden you realize, well, I'm alone here in my home. My loved one is no longer here. And now I feel a little bit alone and isolated from my friends because they've stopped contacting me. And it's not because they don't care about you anymore. It's because, as you said earlier, it's difficult to know what else to say after you've expressed your sympathy and said, honey, can I do anything for you? Here's a casserole when you get hungry. After all that has stopped, then there's this silence, this absolute silence. It's very insular and it can be very isolating. So John's memorial was on, I want to say, on a Friday. We're just going to go with Friday. I have a terrible thing with dates and days, but the next Friday, I had a friend that I didn't get to see very often. And I called her and said, we're going to a painting class tonight. I said, get your gear and I'll come pick you up. So we drove to across the bay here in Mobile to Baldwin County to Fairhope, and we took a painting class. And it was very therapeutic. I enjoyed it. I had a good time. It took my mind off the sadder parts of what had been happening at home. And if you can get your head up long enough to find something to do that you will really, really enjoy, not to ignore or push off the sorrow that you're feeling, but just to take that energy, because grief takes a lot of energy, a lot. But to take some of that energy and just refocus it, just even for a little while, it's like taking a 15-minute power nap in the afternoon of an exhausting day. I found that to be very helpful, but I'm also very, very careful about saying, if you do this, you'll feel better. If you do that, that'll work for you. That worked for me. It might not work for another soul on the planet. So I'm cautious about giving advice on what to do. I just know that for me, that was a creative outlet, not just for, the thought in my head that maybe I'll turn out to be another Picasso, which, trust me, there was no possibility of that happening, but that I could say, okay, I'm doing this this is part of the expression of my grief. Painting this ridiculously terrible picture is part of the expression of my grief. And that worked for me.
And then, let's see, can you share your experience that you had with those conflicting emotions? I know you talked a bit about it in your book, where 1 minute you're like, everybody go away, I want to be alone. And then everybody goes away and now you're alone and you're like, wait, can you come back?
You have zero control over those feelings. You just, because that is very true. You've got people at your house, you're going, I just want to lay down and take a nap. And then they leave and you're like, I don't have anybody to talk to. So you have to give yourself permission not to judge yourself, not to say you're wrong for feeling this way. You ought to be doing such and such. You have to say, okay, this sucks. I've lost somebody I love, somebody I care about. I'm not ever going to see them again. I won't hear their voice. John and I used to have a conversation every Sunday evening without fail, and that was not going to happen anymore. So I had to just decide that it was okay either way. If I wanted to be engaged with people, that was good. If I didn't want to be engaged with people, that was okay. If I was confused, that was okay. If I was angry, that was okay. It didn't matter what I was feeling and how much and it can happen like at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, you feel this way. And at 12:02, you feel something completely different. And that's okay too. It's all right. Love goes on. Love goes on.
That's the beauty of it.
Yes, it is the beauty of it.
Can you tell us, what was it about John that captured your heart?
He's really tall. I'm really tall. He was 6'4", and at the time was, I guess when we met, I was about 5'10". So he was really tall. He had great legs, but he also was willing to be silly. Not a lot of men have a lot of comfort with acting like you're 12 sometimes, and I'm very much my inner child and my outer child are the same person. If you've seen one, you've seen the other. And I like to laugh. I like to kid around. I like to joke. And he was very open to being silly with me, or at least not making me feel ridiculous when I wanted to be silly by myself in his presence. Yeah. So I enjoyed that about him. He had a big heart. If you asked him to do something, generally speaking, he would go out of his way to try to do it. And his friends knew without a doubt that they could count on him.
There's a chapter in your book that you write about that I loved, because I could see myself there, where you were making John dinner. It was the very first dinner.
Taco dinner.
Yes, taco night.
Yes, taco. They say every writer takes a poetic license with some of the facts around any sort of thing that they're describing. There is not one word in that story that is not true. Not one. I almost set the house on fire. And that was one of the things that I admired about him. He ran into the kitchen and grabbed a pan full of flaming taco shells and ran them out and tossed them into the front yard so that the house wouldn't catch fire. And he didn't put on mitts or anything like that. He just grabbed it and he singed both hands, and his arms were burned and all the hair was missing. And it's, when I think about it now, it's, to me, it's extremely funny. It's a good, happy memory,
Yeah.
that I was so determined to make him our first married meal. And I'm as about a good a cook now as I was then. And that was, I was not a good cook. So
Was there anything that as you spent your time with John that he would request you to make, or was it that he would do the cooking sometimes maybe, and there was something that he would make?
he was a decent cook. I didn't know how to fry a pork chop until I met John. And I'm from the South. We fry everything. Chicken lips. If it can be put into a pan, rolled around in flour and put into a pan, we will fry it. And he was able to teach me how to cook a lot of things that I never would have learned otherwise. He also taught me how to iron. I didn't know how to iron anything. And I don't know if you iron men's shirts. They're hard. And he taught me to iron and how to cook pork chops. He made the best pancakes on the planet because I like them crepe thin with crispy edges,
Yeah.
and he's the only one that could do that. I've never had a pancake since he died that was as good as his pancake. So yes, he had some specialties: pancakes and fried eggs and pork chops. And he's a good barbecuer. He was good on a grill.
I
And he
think a
liked,
lot of people like to barbecue in the South, so that's a
oh yeah,
plus.
it's a prerequisite. If you're going to live down here, you better have a grill and you better know how to use it.
In letter 16, you talk about a sadness you feel because you and John didn't have a song together. And if you could have chosen a song, what song, and make it your own, what song would it have been?
Oh my goodness. You know, honest to Pete, I have thought about that so many times, and I've had some ideas pop into my head, and I always discard them. And I think it's because I would be doing it in his absence, and it doesn't, it won't be genuine because he didn't help me choose it. It's not something that we used to listen to together and go, this is, we loved, I think it's Crosby, Stills and Nash, Our House. We liked that song.
Yeah,
We never claimed it. We never said, this is our song. So, no,
it's a
haven't
beautiful
chosen
song
a
though.
song. Yeah.
What fears or doubts did you wrestle with when you felt called to become a pastor and preach?
There wasn't a fear or doubt that I didn't wrestle with. John, after he graduated from college, wanted to go into ministry then. And he enrolled, first he went to the Army. And after he got out of the Army, he enrolled in seminary. And his first wife did not want that. She did not want that. So he didn't get to stay, didn't get to finish. He had to go home. So that was always something that he wanted. And there was a point in time where we both went to a retreat for Christians, Christian leadership. And there were people there who were recruiting for lay pastors, people who were not seminary trained. And there was a training program available for lay pastors. And they said, well, you need to do this. And John was like, yeah. And I was like, no. I said, no, I don't want to. That is not my calling. I had been an educator for most of my life. And I thought that was fine. That was what God had wanted me to do. And I could not see myself in a pastoral position, particularly in a pulpit. And I bucked it for at least a year. There's a story in there that's basically the
Yeah.
story of how I told God, no, 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 I'm not doing it. That's not what you don't know what you're talking about. You got the wrong woman. And he just kept at me until I finally yelled at him, yelled at John, yelled at God. And that's never, I don't suggest that for anybody. That's not a good idea. If you believe in God, you know, it's a better idea to be respectful and not yell at God because he has more to say about what goes on in your life than you do. So anyway, I yielded and went in. We became co-pastors at a small church in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi. And the first couple of years, I will not lie, they were not happy years for me. They were miserable years, but I still didn't think that I was doing what I should be doing. And I was the worst preacher on the planet. the worst. I think my first solo sermon was maybe 7 minutes long, and that's stretching it. I really didn't. I didn't fall in love with it till around my third year, when I got a little more comfortable and realized that a lot of what goes into being a pastor has less to do with kind of the way you serve people, the way you love on them, and the way you welcome them, and the way you um, help, which doesn't always mean doing something physical. Sometimes prayer is as essential as anything else is to helping somebody. And sometimes it's, like I said, just sitting with them and being present. I turned out to be especially good at hospice situations and dealing with people who were in the hospital and who were dying, and with the families of those people. And that was, I consider that my biggest spiritual ministerial gift, is dealing with grief, oddly enough, which, that was true before the situation where John died and I wrote the book. I was good at grief before I had to be good at grief.
What were some of the challenges you faced as a woman in ministry? And do you believe women in ministry today face those same challenges, or is it easier for them?
I believe we continue to face those same challenges. I do, however, think that we're getting better at dealing with it, that we have more resources. Right now, I'm a Presbyterian, and in my presbytery, we have almost as many female pastors in the presbytery right now as we have male pastors. And that is incredibly uplifting and encouraging. So we have a little group we call the Clergy Feminine, and we back each other up. If we're struggling with something, but there's still that mode of thought, even among congregations, and even among women members in congregations, that women don't belong in the pulpit. And PCUSA is my Presbyterian association, and it's the most liberal of all the Presbyterian denominations out there. And we know, women I know that are in ministry, we know that's where we're supposed to be. There's a lot of people left in the world who don't accept that. And I've learned to sort of respect that position rather than bristle about it or be angry, especially if they're just really upfront. I appreciate the fact that somebody will say to me, I can't go to church here because I'm convicted that you don't belong where you are. And I'm like, well, I appreciate your honesty, your forthrightness, and I hope you find a church where you feel comfortable, that you can worship in a way that is meaningful to you. But you're still up against it in a lot of ways. There's still a lot of misogyny, a lot of thoughts about how women are not as academically committed, and not as academically skilled, not as good at interpretation, not as good at like depth diving into scripture. Now, the women I know who've been to seminary are smart as whips. I would stack them up against anyone I know, and most of the people I don't know. They're very well educated, very well spoken, very capable, and excellent ministers. They're just really, really good in the pulpit and out. So while we're doing better, it's getting better. There's a long way to go. There's a long way to go.
What would you maybe say to someone who was interested, a woman who was interested in becoming a minister?
Do it. I would say do it. There are, if you go into any field, any what you might want to call a professional field, even if it's not a professional field, if you decide you want to be a plumber, you need to consider the case of what it is that you will be doing, what it will require, what it will cost, how it will benefit you. Will it support your family? Is it something you're going to enjoy? I know a lot of people come into their adulthood and they take jobs that they just really can't stand because they think that's all that's available to them, or that it pays more money than what they actually would like to do. And those are very valid concerns, especially in today's world where you don't know if you're going to be paying $3 or $5 for a dozen eggs from one day to the next. But if you have an inclination, and if you look at it um, logically, or if you have somebody that you can talk to and say, okay, tell me, you're doing it, I want to do it. Tell me about your situation. How's it been for you? How have you made it successful? Where do you see there are still problems? We're friends, so tell me what you think about whether I have the capacity for this or not. I just say utilize all your resources, find out everything you can. And even if it looks like a dim prospect, but you really want to do it, you should do it. Just do it. Fortunately, we live forever now. You're not going to die at 55 or 60 as a general rule. So if you get in there and you don't like it by the time you're 30 or 35, change gears, do something else. I have retired now 4 times. The last 2 have been from ministry, but I retired 2 times before that from completely different professions. And I'm not done. And I think ministry will be my last profession, but I'm not putting that, I'm not going to write that in stone. I'm working on another book, and I'm almost in the middle. And I have a dream that it would be so much easier to finish if I could move to Scotland for a year, live kind of isolated on the Isle of Skye where I would have no distractions, and I could get the rest of this book done. Um, it might happen. I might do it. I might pursue that. There are things right now that constrain me voluntarily. I'm not being made to do what I'm doing, but I'm choosing not to move or make big changes right now because of other considerations in my life. But I would like to move to Scotland for a year at least and write books, or at least finish this one.
What is it about Scotland that kind of draws you?
I love Scotland. It is wild. It is rugged. The people are fabulously interesting and very warm. A lot of times you hear that people in the UK are kind of aloof or, not very friendly. I did not find that to be true at all. When I went, I retired from my last church on Sunday, the 16th of May, and got on a plane and went to Scotland on Monday, the 17th of May to celebrate my birthday, which was on May the 18th, but also so I didn't have to think about what I wasn't going to be doing anymore. And Scotland was very charming. I have literally one known Scottish relative, but I claim him. Therefore I claim Scotland as my home country.
You and John also talked a lot about traveling to other countries, and you didn't get the chance. And if there was one place maybe that you could have gone with John, where would it be and why?
He served in Germany when he was in the army, and he loved Austria. He loved it. That was his favorite place to go and be. And we talked about that on many, many occasions, traveling for him to show me Austria, because he loved it so much. But I make the remark in the book that it was ironic that he wouldn't take me to his college reunion one state away. So I never, ever, believed him when he said, oh, well, we're going to go to Austria one day. And I was like, well, when we go to Tennessee, then I'll start thinking about Austria. So
Yeah.
it never happened. He didn't really like to, once you got him somewhere, he was fine, but he didn't really like to travel. Not very much.
And where did you find your love for traveling?
Oh, in 1963, I had one of my mother's friends. My mother was a superb tennis player. So a lot of her tennis people, they came from all over the country. I lived in Pascagoula, Mississippi, and there was a shipyard, and we had international business. And then there was a Chevron corporation, and people came in from all over the country. We had teachers from every state in the United States and some of them from abroad. And some of Mom's tennis people turned me on to literature, which I began to be a voracious reader by the time I was 10 years old. And I learned about all of these exotic, different locations. And for some reason, somewhere around the age of 11, I got it in my head that I was going to France. I didn't know when, I didn't know how I was going to get there, but I was going to France. And when John died, I thought, if you don't do it now, while you're still physically able to get on a plane and go, you're never going to get it done. And you've wanted to go to France for 50 something years. So
Yes.
get on a plane and go to France. And that's where I started, was in France, and loved it. Every place I've been, I have absolutely loved, but Scotland just calls my name. It just calls me.
I know you were talking in the book about your going to France and that you were fluent in a couple of words in French.
Mostly not the repeatable ones. Um, I got on Babbel and for 6 months assiduously studied French every single day. Got to France and forgot literally everything I had learned in the 6 months. I spoke the most unfluent French you can possibly speak in a foreign country. They were very gracious about it, but I was a terrible French speaker, just absolutely awful. Um, and then I went to Italy, so I studied Italian. I did a lot better with Italian. Italian's easier for some reason than French. But no, I was like, I think I said something about my French was très mal. It was very, very bad.
And you also were able to say pigeon. I just love that imagery in your book about that.
It was fun. It was great fun. I have no regrets. Even making a fool of myself, I have no regrets.
In your epilogue, you write, I'm not in charge. My job is to make the most of this one and let God take care of tomorrow. How did you learn to relinquish control and to really, truly kind of let go and let God?
I would be I would be prevaricating if I said I had. I'm losing you. Are we still? Are you still seeing me? Because you're
I'm
flipping.
still, yes, I can see you.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to keep talking because my screen's doing weird things. Um, I'm not going to say that it's true 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that I don't worry or don't try to seize control. But I have learned that really, you don't know what to expect tomorrow. I could wake up, I don't know, on an alien planet, and it's silly to make plans and then be mad if they don't happen. So I just kind of go one day at a time. It's not like I don't say I have to go to the grocery store or there will be no more milk and bread. I make those plans, but I try not to get so dead set on what is going to happen that I'm unable to cope with it if the plans change. I try not to be a control freak.
Now you had to start over at 65, which
Mhm.
is kind of like a death in itself when you have to just totally redo everything. Did you believe that, or do you believe that there's life after death and a second chance at joy?
Yes, I do. I do. Um, I think that you have to be open to it. I mean, you have to be. I have a relatively. I'm not going to say optimistic. I have an openness to possibilities and opportunities. So I have really kind of come to the thinking, without being determined that it's true, that I'll probably spend the rest of my life unmarried, living alone, and I'm okay with that. It's fine. I miss the two things I miss most about marriage. I doubt seriously I will ever be able to replicate that. John was like the world's best back scratcher. I miss back scratching a lot. Um, he was terrible at pillow talk. You could tell him all kinds of stuff, and you could say, "Don't tell anybody. This is between the two of us." And by 10 a.m. the next morning, the entire town would know what you had talked about on the pillow the night before. But I don't. I'm not unhappy. I'm not lonely. I don't sit around and wonder, well, is this it for the rest of my life? I'm content, and I have joy. Um, and I'm not looking to change it, but I'm also not looking to refuse change, to disavow the fact that things might change. I just, whatever happens, happens.
Now, you've written a lot of beautiful letters in your book, and I was wondering if you'd pick some and read them to us.
Oh gosh. Okay. Believe it or not, this is the only copy I have, and I had to borrow this from my dad. There's some of them are kind of long. Do you remember anything in particular? Let's see. I want to pick the ones that are 900 pages long.
Anyone that you would like to read, any one or two?
I will start with letter number 2, if I can find letter number 2. So letter number 3, letter number 1. Okay, letter number 2, which is the first letter is basically like, you're dead. Okay, you've died. Now what? But letter number 2 is when I had gotten to that point where things had settled down, the service was over, the
Yeah.
flowers were done, the food had been eaten, the cards had stopped coming. So I said, Dear John, damn boy, this is hard. In 3 weeks, I've managed to get 1 load of laundry done. 1. And that was a desperation load because I was running out of underwear. I spent almost 2 hours trying to separate darks from lights, a 10-minute job at best. I'm moving like the blood in my veins is lead. Bob says this is normal, and Bob was our counselor while we were married. I know that's true. I think he misses you too. Let's talk about frozen dinners. I wasted several pounds of meat I couldn't force myself to cook, so I've been reduced to meatloaf and mashed potatoes from the freezer. I don't even like meatloaf. Although Boston Market's meatloaf could be worse. Tonight at Greer's, I bought 3 bags of lima beans. Why? That should last a while. Of course, they're not edible without a little piglet, are they? I sold some of your stuff. I didn't think I could do that either, but I did. I used the money to buy a ticket to France. At first, I was giddy. Then I thought about all the times we talked about going to your beloved Austria, which is a memory impregnated with irony since you wouldn't even take me to one of your college reunions 1 whole state away. This made me sad too. Bob says this is normal, and I know that's true. I couldn't say goodbye to Henry. That I really could not do. I saw him without intending to, and he started wiggling. I turned my back on him, got in your truck, and drove off. Well, you can imagine how that felt. He misses you. I know that's true. A woman I know lost her husband suddenly several years ago. We were sharing our stories over coffee and donuts. She reached across the table and touched my hand. I burst into tears, which sort of surprised the girls behind the counter, and it surprised me too. Bob would say that this is perfectly normal. While that may be true, it doesn't mean I have to like it. I can't wear waterproof mascara. You know that's true. Marcia. So let's see.
Yay. Love it.
Thank you.
Love it. Love it. Laura, can I ask a question or
Yes,
you
go
need to?
ahead.
Okay. Well, first, hi, Marcia, again.
I
I love you, girl. You're just amazing. There's no better word than that to say about you. But so I have a comment and then I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Right. The comment is that, first of all, this is a beautiful interview. Beautiful interview. And I love the fact that earlier you talked about something that people you think people would know it, but they don't because they don't always mean well. But people need to, you talked about, and I'm paraphrasing, that there is no set time for grief to be over, right? And I think it was the Queen Elizabeth said something along the lines that the price for love is grief. No, the price for grief is, or the price of love is grief. In other words, she was saying the more that you love this person, the longer and deeper the grief is. And if people don't understand that, this is me talking, it's too bad because you can't put a time on it. So I'm glad that you brought that out so that when people are watching this video on YouTube, I think it'll speak to some people. It'll confirm for some people that, yeah, she's right. That's how I feel. And maybe it'll teach other people to stop putting a time limit, right?
hope so.
Yeah,
I've been gone for 6 years, and every now and again, it will dawn on me as if it's a new reality. And every single time I think, oh, honey, and just this little wave washes over me.
Mm.
It's been 6 years, but that's okay. I can't say I welcome that feeling, but I
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge it, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't try to fight it off. I don't try to
Yes.
pretend that it doesn't exist.
Absolutely. That's great. So that was the comment. Also, you got me on the Scotland thing because I don't think we've talked in a long time. I'm like, okay, Scotland, you really there's something that's drawing you there to write,
I
right?
think it's because it's wild and woolly, and I am wild and woolly. It just
Yes, you are.
appeals to my nature. It's gorgeous. But it's very raw. It's not like England is beautiful. You can get on a train and head for some other country in England, and you have all these little squared off patches of green, grassy areas with little sheep dotting, the landscape, and you get into some around. They don't cross in that country that anybody would love to. So it is like air. Just if you're in the country, you just hang out, you just do whatever, and it's very, very beautiful in a not a stark way, but in a dramatic way. It's a very dramatic landscape.
Hmm.
People are incredibly warm and interesting, and I could understand them, and I can speak Scottish relatively well.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Laura, have you been to Scotland? Laura's Irish.
I have not. I do have some relatives from Scotland. I do love Scottish music. I love the pictures that you see there, the cliffs and things and whatnot. And I think it is really beautiful. And I wouldn't mind going if I won the lottery. Yeah, I would go in a heartbeat.
Well, look, you start in Ireland and just run up to the top tip and skip over into Scotland, go down to the bottom, and then fly home from Edinburgh, or start in Edinburgh and go up to the top to the Highlands and cut over into Northern Ireland and go down to the bottom and fly home from Limerick or wherever. But they're very now the characters I think of both places are very different. Um, when I think of Ireland, I think of passion and uh, patriotism, and those things exist in Scotland, but Scotland is more like, I don't know, they remind me of Wisconsin. Just like, it is what it is, and but they've got same elements of the same kind of landscape, but one is more gentrified, if that makes sense, and one is just wild. And I like the wild side. I just like the wild side.
Yeah, because you're wild. You're wild. We get that.
I know, I'm a wild woman.
In a wonderful way. And I look at it as being free. You're just very free. And I think that's something that people, especially for women, to get to a place where they feel free and not bound with so much weight of responsibility and this and that. So it's like freedom for you. That's how I can see you. I can see you there writing. So the question was, one, are you considering are you considering doing an audio book? Because I think first of all you have that voice, and then the letters. Oh my God, imagine somebody sitting by the fireplace or at the beach or in a quiet place just listening to those beautiful love letters that you wrote. So are you considering an audio book?
No, I think I remember when you were working on your book, you recorded some of it and I listened, and you have a very eloquent, you have a nice, deep, resonant voice, and it's very eloquent, but mine is so twangy and southern. And a lot of people are put off by that. So
Really?
yeah, I think they are. So I'm not sure that if I were to do an audio version, it would be with my own voice.
Laura, you need to chime in. Don't you really, really listen? Because
I
that's
have to
southern part
say,
of that, right? We want that. You
yeah,
don't want it to sound like an AI,
No,
right?
no, I don't
So
even.
and it's from your heart. It's from your, and I like your voice. I mean, I think that's southern. That was really cool. I think that's really
yeah,
cool because you're a southern person from Alabama that I could listen to all the time. Now, when it has that heavy and
You
with
like
all
me?
due respect, yes, I do. With that with all respect, with that deep twangy, y'all come back here, that's a little hard, but but your voice is really, and you're a preacher. Come on now, people listen to your voice all the time.
That is true, but they're also from Alabama. So I don't have anybody from New York or New Jersey or Maryland hanging out in my sanctuary. So,
But I guarantee you, if you did the audiobook and use your voice, I think it will open up. Just like when you were talking about Scotland,
mhm.
I'm from New Jersey. I lived in New York. But when I listened to you, when you were talking earlier about Scotland, I was visualizing. So your accent wasn't like, distracting. This was a woman talking after having suffered a great loss, has written about it, and now she has another book that's coming in her spirit. That's what I was hearing. I was visualizing you just really chilling in Scotland. So just listen, I'm not going to be pushy, but just put a pin in it, okay?
You'll
Yeah.
have to explain it to me because I have zero idea how one would go about doing that. So
Yeah,
that's the only
I
problem
will.
about writing at my age. It's like Grandma Moses. I don't know what the rules are. You
Yeah,
find it
we'll, we'll
surreptitious.
we'll talk about it because I don't know myself. I want to do one for my own book, and but it isn't that hard. I think even AI can do it. They'll use your voice, and they'll actually do the audiobook. I've heard about that. I just haven't pursued it. I know, and I'll say this really quick because I know we're getting close to the time. Um, when I checked last with Fiverr, Fiverr they're like freelance specialists in different areas, book writing, book editing, all that kind of stuff they can do. And I think it was like, because my book is so long, it's like almost 600 pages. So it was like $2,000. Your book is nowhere near that. So it wouldn't cost you that much. But you know what? We'll talk about it another
Oh,
time.
okay, we'll talk.
Yeah.
I'm, as I said, I'm halfway through the next project, and you guys stayed on me admirably on this project, and I'm kind of at a lull. I don't exactly have writer's block, but I've like the big chapter has been done, the climax in the middle of the book is done, and I'm looking at the next chapter and I'm like, it's gonna be so boring. I don't know if I want to write that chapter or not. But
Is it a memoir or are you writing something?
it started out to be a memoir, but I decided to novelize it, to turn
Oh,
it more into a novel as opposed to a memoir.
nice.
And it's sort of like the tail end of a coming of age story. It's more like a coming of adult age story.
I like that. Okay, I'm excited. So my last question before I turn it over to Laura is would you when you were writing, as you were writing the letters to your beloved John, based on your faith, and you did mention earlier you believe in life after death. My question is, did you ever feel, and maybe this is in the book, I'm going to get it, did you feel his presence? Because you're speaking to him, and I'm just wondering, did you ever feel that throughout or at some point?
I don't necessarily think I could separate myself from his presence. When we're talking about difficulties, I didn't bring this up earlier, but one of the more difficult aspects of him not being here is that he waltzed off with 35 years of my personal history. Um, Most of what I have just, he knew more about me than anyone else. I knew more about him than anyone else in his life. All of our like inside jokes, all of our facial expressions, all of the things that I still, after 6 years, I'll like get up and go, I wonder if John knows where I put the so and so. And I
Mm,
have to stop and go, well, no, if he does know, he's not going to tell you. So that he's always with me. Most of my life, I spent more of my
mhm.
life with him than I did without him. So
Wow.
I'm not saying in a ghostly presence kind of way, but he's just a part of the fiber of my being. And I don't think I can not have his influence still felt and influence my own decisions because of the amount of time we spent together.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I just, I'm sure with other widows and widowers, this is who I hope also will watch the YouTube video because their story probably is different but similar too. I would imagine. Um, Anderson Cooper, do you know from CNN? He has a podcast, and I forget it's got a beautiful title. And what he does is he brings on different guests because he lost his brother at I think he was Anderson was 10, and his brother took his life in front of their mother. and
Oh
he
my,
never got over it. And his father died when he was early. So here he is. He said, I'm at 56 years old. And I watched a couple of the podcasts, and he always gets choked up because it doesn't matter how many years, right?
no, it doesn't. It
Yeah. But that's something that I would offer to check his podcast out.
all right, I'm familiar with who he is. I didn't know he had a podcast though. Of course, podcasts, I'm older, a lot older than both of you. So podcast is still largely an unknown entity to me.
Okay.
Although my son stays on me all the time. Mom, you got to start listening to podcasts. I always say, I will.
Well, it's a hot item. It's a big deal. Two things. One, check it out when you can. All you got to do is, Google Anderson Cooper podcast, and it'll take you there. And it's a free podcast. So that's one. And two, this is way down the line. Maybe, just maybe, one day God will call you to do a podcast on grief, because what you've shared today, I think, is precious. And I think people, whenever we share our stories, the science is that people will find something in it that relates to them.
I
And,
agree with that
right?
100%.
And with all the grief that's happening, we need voices. That's why Anderson is doing, I mean, he's known and all that. He's an influencer and all that. But there's so many different podcasts that broach different topics, and people are watching them because people are looking for ways to cope, to find joy in the midst of all this darkness that's happening. So your voice, I think, would be great to do a podcast on. I don't know. We can talk about it another time when the time is right or when you're ready, and we can come up with a nice little title for it.
Well,
And
don't laugh, but
Hmm?
don't laugh, but not this past Christmas, but the Christmas before that. For my Christmas present, my dad gave me a kit with a microphone and
No,
a starter kit for podcasts. And I'm like,
really.
yeah. So
Uh,
it's a possibility. It's a possibility.
well, we're both women of faith, as well
Yes.
as Laura, and two or more witnesses. Come on now, how many you need, sis? You got your dad
Y'all
and
poked
me.
and prodded me into doing this last go round, so there's no
Uh,
telling.
Um, my last question is really quick. I wanted to ask you, how are your children
They're
coping?
great. They're great.
Yeah, they are.
Are you talking about coping with your dad's death?
Yes.
Okay. John struggled with maintaining close relationships with family members, oddly enough, much more so than friends. But the kids both have voicemails from when he would call and wish them happy birthday, and they've never gotten rid of them. And every day, every year on their birthdays, they listen to those
Oh.
recorded messages.
Hmm.
So that little empty spot is still there, and at least at that particular time is very acute. So they grieve, and that's their dad. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with grieving him, and you can't ever think of your parents if they're no longer with you. You can't think about them and not miss them.
That's
They're
right.
such crucial,
Yes. Yeah.
actors in your
Absolutely.
life. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I'm
Other
going to
than
turn
that,
it
they're doing
over.
great.
Huh?
Other than that, they're doing great. And they gave me 4 grandchildren, so they're off the hook for that.
I know. I saw some pictures. They were beautiful. I'm going to turn it over to Laura, but when we do get a chance to talk, I wanted to share with you that probably next year, we'll see, but I plan to write a book about grief.
Okay. Because
Yeah.
you had a, I don't even remember how short it was. I just remember it was a really, really short span of time, and you were just bombarded with death.
Yes. And you know what they call it? It's in psychology, it's called grief overload, because I had 2 sisters, 2 brothers, 2 nephews, 2 nieces. And since then, I've had first cousins that I was close to that have
Mm.
passed, and 2 good, very close friends. I don't know well, I do know how I'm coping. But it's in my spirit to write about it. And so my daughter gave me the title, because I was saying I want this to be a memoir, and I've never written a memoir. So I'm happy that you're going to write a novel too, because I got that in my spirit. I'm going to be writing a novel, but we need to talk about that. But anyway, it's called, um, okay, what is it called? I I I called her grief. a memoir of love and loss and the woman called grief who carried me home. So
That's
what
a
I'm trying to say
big
is
old title, Brittany. That's a whopping big title. It's going to take up half your cover.
it's the title. The title is I Called Her Grief. The subtitle is long. You can always have a long subtitle, but the title is I Called Her. I named her grief. I can't remember. And it's a picture of a pregnant woman, and she is grief, and she's carrying me home back to myself, the new self.
Yeah.
So this is going to be very cathartic for me. So I really want to do it where I can have some space, and some quiet. But we can talk about that another time, about the audiobook, about the podcast.
Well, now
Yeah.
hopefully the novel that I'm working on is called What a Fool Believes, and my goal is to be finished, to be at least down to the first edit by next summer on my birthday. That's the plan.
May. Nice. Well, Laura, I'm
So
going to
this
turn.
means then, in closing, that we're all playing the lottery, we're all winning, and all three of us are going to Scotland to write. So we
Absolutely.
actually
All
finished.
right.
I'm not counting on my royalties to get me there because I got a check a couple of weeks ago for $7.69. But the way I look at it, hey, it's money I wouldn't have had otherwise.
There you go.
I have it's in its own little account, and it's mine going back to Scotland money.
Wow, you're serious.
Yes, I am serious.
Laura, listen, that sounds like a great idea. I love to travel too. So and I've never been to Scotland, and I've heard good things about it. I really have.
All
You know,
right, Miss.
you need to invite me up north. You're not going to come down south, so you just need to invite me up to your place.
Oh, but wait, you know what? I would love to do that, and I think that's a great idea. And you can come. We can go and hang out in New York. Laura and I, we can all get together because I'm like 20 minutes from Manhattan, maybe an hour with traffic.
Yeah.
But anyway, real quick though, we may be, and this is something we can put on that list of to-do things that I just listed. Talk about because we may be coming. We meaning Healing Waters, our Forgiveness Frees the Butterfly retreat may be coming to Alabama next year.
Are you? You're not pulling my leg, are you?
No, right, Laura? Because Dr. Watson lives in Alabama, and she wants us. She's a minister.
Where?
I forget the name. It's a place I'm not familiar. It's not like Montgomery. It's outside of one of the bigger places, but I'll get that information. And she's going to do a podcast. She wrote a book, but she wants us to do a retreat in Alabama with the women that she serves. So see,
I want to facilitate some part of it.
Really,
I want to play. Yes, I want to.
Wow, look at you! Listen to this, Laura. See, pays to ask. You have not because you asked. I didn't even ask you though.
Nope. Just volunteered. Just shoved myself right in there.
That's Marcia. I don't have to worry about that.
It's true.
Never shy. Okay, Laura, I'll turn it back to you.
Well, thank you so much, Marcia, for joining us on the Healing Waters Global She Reads. Thank you for sharing your Dear John letters with us and for reminding us that weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning.
Amen.
I really hope that today's conversation has empowered you and inspired you as much as it has us. And if it has, please click like and subscribe. And until next time, keep reading, keep writing, and definitely keep healing. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Marcia. Love you.
Thank you, ladies.
I thought we turned that off, Laura.